Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick here to talk about the defense from that loss to the Steelers. And while this won't be a really pleasant discussion, it's nowhere near the difficult discussion we're going to have talking about the offense tomorrow night. So this should be the more fun of the two. Joining me here to do that is Alec Poulianos of One Winning Pod. Alec, how you doing?
Ken, I'm hanging in there. I agree with you. I was happy I got defense for this one because I look forward to listening to your offensive show, but it's going to be painful. We just finished recording our recap episode ourselves, and I mean, this is a very difficult game on many levels. Hubris and just poor execution, I think, really doomed the Ravens in this one.
About as bad a game of execution as you can have. They also had, a lot of other things go wrong, but just maybe I have to even go through this a little bit, tell you what the day was like to understand just the kind of weight this carries on a real Baltimore sports fan who's a fan of both the Ravens and Orioles.
Yeah.
So the Orioles went down 1-0 on Saturday night with their first loss to the Rangers. And then on Sunday afternoon, they're slated to face them again. Grayson Rodriguez is ready to go. I see you're even wearing the right T-shirt for that.
Yeah.
And, Grayson has been pitching great in the second half. Of course, terrible time situation. It is just, why don't they do something about this is what I keep saying. I don't know what it would be, but neither the NFL, obviously, or Fox is going to really give a crap about a Baltimore fan who's inconvenienced by the fact that these games overlap in the way they do. So you have a 4:07 game, but that doesn't mean I can leave my house at 4:07, does it? Especially if I'm not recording information on the game, right?
Right.
So we leave our house at about 3:00 and left the video right where it was supposed to be and ready to pick up when we get home and finish our analysis of the defense with that, which is the first thing we do. And we got down there. Actually, traffic was really fast getting down there. There's a lot of information you probably don't need. We go to the stadium and we're early. And we didn't go to the stadium, actually. We're on Pratt Street and we're early. We're getting across from our parking spot. And we duck into the Pratt Street Tavern to see what's happening in the game. And Pratt Street, whatever it is, something or other. And then they've got TVs there. Fortunately, they didn't tell us order beer or get out kind of thing. And so we're watching the game, and the block punt had already occurred. We didn't get to see that. We did get to see them close within 10-8, where the Ravens made some plays and they stopped the ball. And then I've got the extra annoyance. Believe me, this is a problem. And I do love my wife very much, but Maureen keeps telling us we got to go to the ball game. We're getting too close to the start of the game. And I go, no, we there plenty of time. Please let me be the decision maker on this. and then we have that natural struggle that occurs. and so there can either be pouting or there can be other things going on. But anyway, we did end up sitting there and watching it all the way up to the point where Jackson was strip sacked with under a minute to go. And of course, the Ravens still had another drive after that, amazingly.
Right.
But, then we're down to one possible win. So it's been a terrible weekend. Not only have the Orioles lost a game, the Ravens lost a game they really needed. That would have been a huge win in the divisional race and really in the AFC race as a whole, but definitely in the divisional race. And then they lose the Maryland lost to Ohio State in a game they were staying in for a good long time. And Notre Dame got beat too also, which is my wife's alma mater and a problem then. As well. So people are unhappy generally. And now we're all dependent on the Orioles coming through for us at 4:07. And sure enough, got in there at plenty of time, by the way, 5 minutes early to our seats. I just want to point that out for purposes of next time and who we're going to listen to in terms of when we leave for the game. We got in there plenty of time. And then we watched Grayson get demolished in the second and third innings of this game.
Yeah.
And that was that. So, very difficult kind of a weekend in sports, but we're going to talk about the defense here, which is actually the best part of probably the entire weekend of Baltimore sports, was how the defense played in this game.
Indeed, it was. Had a similar kind of fate to you. Fortunate enough to be able to go to game 2. So I had to figure out what my strategy was. And my plan was get to the city as early as possible. So I got down there early, watched the game at Pickett Brewing, which might have been a death sentence given the quarterback of this team, but went to the Pickett Brewing. It was a quiet spot. It was kind of off the beaten path, and it was nice to be able to go there. It wasn't too crazy. And then walk over to the stadium, kind of missed the third quarter because of it. Caught a little bit here and there, and then watched the rest of the fourth quarter from my seat in the stadium. A lot of people were streaming from their seats in the stadium. All the video boards were just static, like ALDS, which was kind of annoying. I was like, don't we all know there's a game that we kind of care about? Like,
yeah, I mean, I felt that way on Saturdays. Why the hell don't they put the Maryland game up there? You get this huge amount of crossover fans. You always make a big deal of it whenever Ravens come to the stadium. Show us the damn game.
Yeah.
How hard is that?
Yeah, it was very disappointing. So then, watching the stream, there's all this disappointment, and then we're like, all right, well, let's go get a win, and then we get those 2 runs early, and we're like, okay, maybe this is going to work out, and then just heartbreak. It was really difficult, windy, kind of where we were sitting too, and kind of cool, and just like wasn't fun, kind of sad, but so glad I got to go, and I'm hopeful, man. I'm hopeful that the next 2 days give us some wins, and we can be back on Friday. So we'll see.
Nice. So just officially, I'm headed to London this weekend to catch the Ravens there. But Alec has my ALDS Game 5 tickets, and I'm hoping that he gets to actually see that game.
I really want to give Ken money. Like, I really want this all to work out now.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. That would be perfect. Okay. Even with no guarantees on the result of that game, you want to see that game. There you go.
That's right.
So, one of the big stories coming to this weekend for the Ravens was the injury returns of Beckham, of Stanley, of Williams, and of Humphrey. 4 big names coming back to play for the Ravens in this game. And it's certainly good news. The Ravens tackle situation was exceptionally bad coming into this game. I would love to be able to tell you that Stanley completely fixed that. He did not. In fact, he had a very bad game. I really felt like literally those 4 players, Humphrey, OBJ, Stanley, and Williams, really in a lot of ways cost the Ravens the game. There were other players. Flowers had some dropped. Andrews had some drops. They had touchdowns dropped away. They did some stupid things in terms of snapping the ball on 4th and 2 that didn't make any sense. But the biggest single, maybe the worst 4 players on the field for the Ravens were those 4 returning players. Each of them made a large contributing play. If you're talking about Beckham, he had a couple of completions. I do not believe Beckham had a drop of any sort in this game, but he sure as heck did not do a good job preventing that interception in the end zone. And that was an enormous play. All he's got to do is wrap around, tackle basically that defensive back, and it's safe. But he had no chance to make that play. There's, you got to be on that defensive back at that point, ripping his arms down basically to strip him. Yeah. So that was bad.
Yeah. It was a backbreaking play. I mean, I was saying in our show, I really don't like these one-dimensional plays in the red zone where it's like, there's no read. It's a 0 read. You just are going to immediately throw it out to OBJ in that instance. I think Lamar's a great processor, and he makes so much, ability to create with his feet and gain extra time in the pocket and figure out who's open in the red zone. And it's just completely stripping his secret sauce to give him a 0 read, play like that. I don't like those options for us.
It did take a lot of the read ability away from Jackson, all the movement around the pocket, by basically having such domination on both edges that he wasn't free to do anything in this game. He barely had any ample time and space opportunities the whole game. It was a really bad game from a lot of perspectives for the offensive line in terms of the pass blocking. But here's what I really don't like, and what I really hope that fans will learn about this from a process standpoint. Basically, Lamar made a very similar throw. It was into double coverage last week to Andrews on a fade in the back of the end zone. But again, a very low percentage throw where everything's got to go perfectly right for that ball to be caught. And Andrews made an incredible play on the ball, comes down with it. It does not make it a good throw. It was still a bad throw to take that chance in that situation. We had this situation come up, and I honestly believe it was a pretty bad chance. Now, Beckham did not help him. We've already got that on record. He did a lousy job of playing defense on that play. But I'm also upset that that ball gets thrown in that situation instead of just thrown into the seats and go ahead and take the field goal. Your defense hasn't allowed a damn thing the whole day. And the only time that they did end up giving away a play was when they got out of the defense that has worked for them the whole season so far, which is playing cover 2 play over play.
Yep, that hubris killed me. I mean, it was a straight wink play to have that blitz, no safety help whatsoever. And then you have Humphrey on an island betting on his talent and skill when he's only been on a rotation all game. You don't even trust him enough to play the whole game, 56% of the snaps with Darby. And then you leave him with like on that island. I think that was just like that was the hubris I was talking about. Like that was uncalled for. I don't know what happened. It's like McDonald fainted for a second and they called wink for one play. Like I just don't know how you do that. It was so out of character.
Okay, I do basically understand it. We'll get to some of it in the pass rush play. The problem was it was just the worst time for that situation to come up. They were about 3 yards from the mystical NFL red line field goal range line. So,
okay.
If you want to believe that, but they needed about 3 more yards. And I think that Harbaugh and McDonald had probably discussed it and said, hey, we need to try and get a sack here and get them off the field. Now, in truth, I think it was 3rd down, right, when the play was thrown. Yeah. And then so a sack would have just made him have a difficult 4th down opportunity. It might have been 3rd and 4. I know going to the line, I was thinking these are the 2 chances. They got to get him off the field right here. If he kicks the field goal, he kicks the field goal, but then the Ravens at least have a drive to try and, respond here.
Right. Yep.
Then the pass gets thrown. Go ahead. I'm sorry. You had something to say.
No, I do know what you're talking about. Like now that you mentioned it, I'm like, yeah, I remember thinking the same thing. Like they're at that mythical line that you were talking about. We were talking about it too. Like, what is this line exactly? And they're kind of in field goal range and almost field goal range. And we're like, well, any negative play here, particularly a sack of 5+ yards, this would really screw with their plans. And, we hadn't seen it yet. I think they stuffed them on the run the first play and then went to this pass well. And, kudos to them for identifying an option. Weird thing about this play too is that Humphrey was kind of stride for stride with him until he wasn't. Kind of seemed like he pulled up or something went wrong. Obviously Pickens had separation, but it wasn't like, I thought maybe he could get tackled right away, but no, then he tore away right after that catch was made.
You're leaving.
Yep.
And Humphrey, speed is not his biggest thing now anymore. He was a good speed corner when he came out of school, but he's not anymore. He's not special. He's a physical corner now, and he's a much bigger, more muscular man than he is, and still probably fast enough when he says something on the microphone to get away from most defensive linemen. But if he says it to them, anyway. But he's not a speed corner anymore, and Pickens outraced him there. Pickens proved to be way too tall for all of our other corners in the game. Stevens, I thought, was right on him the whole game, and Stevens is big. Yeah. But he was not big enough to take the ball away from Pickens. He was just too good at going up and getting the ball and also toe tapping when he needed to. But that play in particular, it's a tough play for Humphrey, tough to be on an island. It's a good throw by Pickett. And then Pickett made a very, very bad play following the catch. He didn't go down inside the 5-yard line, which was in real time. I am screaming at the TV set saying that's the biggest mistake he could possibly have made on that play. Now the Ravens get another chance. You'll probably remember in 21 against the Bears, was it?
The Bears. We actually talked about it in our show. Yeah.
Yeah. So Mooney, I think it was, or one of the receivers, went in to score. The Ravens got another chance. And in that game, the Ravens came back and won the game.
They did.
In overtime. So that was a really bad one. This time it didn't happen to work out that way. 2 plays later, the Ravens' dreams were essentially shattered by the fumble. So that was that. We didn't really talk about Stanley in terms of how he cost him the game, but he had a very bad game of pass blocking, extremely bad.
9 pressures were given up by Stanley in this game.
That's a PFF total?
Might have been. I saw it in a tweet. I'm not sure. I'll have to double check that, but it was 9 for from that tweet. It was like 3 for everybody else, and very painful. We knew Moses would be out, and that was going to cause problems with McCary and Falele. Then McCary gets hurt. That's doomsday scenario for Falele, who doesn't really deserve to be on the field. Unfortunately, I hate talking so negatively, but it's just gotten that bad. And now we're in dire straits. I mean, if Stanley doesn't improve, that's a huge liability. I think Moses will be back, so that's I'm optimistic there, but it could be he's not 100% himself. So this is definitely something to monitor and something that's scary.
Right. It is very scary, and I have him for 8 for what it's worth, but and that's
Yeah.
shares of 8, but doesn't matter. That's we're in the ballpark on that.
Mhm.
Williams, is the fourth guy, and here's the issue with Williams: he did not look like himself, and he looks like he's playing with one arm, and you can tell it when he tries to tackle. He has these twisty one-arm tackles. You can also tell it on one swing pass left where he was actually had deep coming in responsibility on a play, could have gotten the guy short of the first down. He just was not willing to go head on, wrap up on this guy, and it probably because he couldn't. And
Yeah.
instead, he gave up a few extra yards, gave up the first down, and we saw several, plays where he just doesn't look like an athlete in the same way. Now, that's painful to me because the other player back there has been one of the Ravens' best defensive players this year, and that's Geno Stone. So if Williams is going to be back, fantastic. Let's have Williams back. Okay, I'm all for it. He's the guy, and even over Stone, I'll take him. Another possibility is Stone on the back end with Williams and Hamilton up at nickel
Slot. Yeah.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Oh, I mean, this is very painful, Ken. I mean, Stone's been playing well. And then you see Williams come in there. Like you said, he's playing with one arm. He has a brace on it. And it's so clear to me that he's not himself and can't play. I think he's just can't really play his position. I think he's the third best safety we have right now, which is painful to say. And maybe as a depth piece, he makes sense because it gets pretty bleak after that. But I don't know about this starting him in his current state. And I don't know what the injury trajectory is for him to be, when he might be better. But at this current stage, I know it's, a pride thing that, if he's active, of course he's going to be the starter kind of thing. But I don't know if that's best for the team. And it's very concerning to me when Stone's playing so well. I understand having him active given his state and the rest of the safeties, but I don't know if he should be getting 95% of the snaps.
Right. And he only missed 3 snaps in this game. So it was a case where there was really a question about that. And obviously Geno Stone has played very well. The other guy who's played pretty well recently is Arthur Mollett. And he played the last 2 games. He was in the contention for the MVP. I forget if I gave it to him or not in the previous game against Cleveland, but he was terrific. And then he would have been in contention this week, except I don't give MVPs out when there's a loss.
Right.
But you saw what he did in this game again, had a sack. And it was, by the way, the Ravens weren't able to get the same sort of 4-man pressure. They got some pressures, but they didn't get any quarterback hits. And obviously, if they didn't get any quarterback hits, they didn't get any sacks. It's not obvious because it's not a 1-for-1 relationship, but it's just about obvious. So,
right.
So they didn't get any sacks. So everything they got was on a 5 or 6-man rush, which was only 3 total sacks. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But Mollett played well, really well disguised slot blitz from the blind side, and got to the quarterback then and took him down, no problem. We've had a lot of problems finishing sacks, obviously.
Yes.
Ardarius Washington and Clowney and others have had problems this year. Pierce. But anyway, this one wrapped up really nice play. He had a couple of PDs, including they went after him, I believe, 2 plays in a row, trying to get their first touchdown of the game in the end zone.
Yeah, he was my moral victory award player. We do moral victories instead of MVPs, but sometimes they're just a little satirical. But that was right on because he played really well in this revenge game narrative for him. I've been very impressed with him. This is a guy that kind of fell off the radar with his injury during camp. It wasn't clear what would happen. Darius was playing well, kept him around over Caillou Kelly, you could say, and wasn't available. Very interesting. I actually tweeted at Zaribek and he didn't reply to me, but I was just like, he's practicing, right? Like, why is he not playing? Like, I was very surprised by it. And now that he's available, it's like, why wasn't he playing? He's been playing quite well, and he gives us flexibility to move Hamilton around, which I appreciate because I feel comfortable with him out there. I think he's performing well, and he's also making this cornerback situation incredibly fuzzy with Humphrey coming back. Like, I don't know what to do with Humphrey, and that's ridiculous to say.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's unpack this because it's a very, very complex situation. And I guess first of all, we'll talk about what the Ravens did do in this game, and then we can talk about maybe what they ought to do if you have a different feeling about that. But so they had Humphrey and Williams come back the same game. So right there, you're in a game against the Steelers where you played a fair amount of base defense. So they had 20, I think it was 23 snaps of base defense, yes, and 37 snaps of nickel. And that's all they played, by the way. They didn't have any variations. So would you like country or Western? We have both kinds. So they didn't have any variations on the thing. And when you have a committed nickel defense, it often ends up that's kind of where you're going. So they want Queen on the field every down. That's the options you have in terms of defensive backs. So Humphrey and Williams returned, and it sent all sorts of ripples in terms of playing time in the secondary. So let's go one position at a time. Start at the outside corners. At left cornerback, which is on the right side of the offense, so left cornerback from the defense's perspective, they had Darby and Yasin splitting those snaps maybe about 65-35 for the first several games. Mm-hmm. And Yasin might have missed the first game, but anyway, about 65-35 is a split.
Exactly.
Both of them playing extremely well. Mm-hmm. And both of them had really low yards per target numbers coming in to this game. Yep. But Rock Yasin grabs a bunch of pine with Humphrey coming back. Starby and Humphrey only playing at left corner in this game.
Indeed. So I don't know what you do. I mean, I'm starting to feel like, given the problems we're having with Williams, you have Stone and Hamilton back there, and then you do the classic Humphrey in the slot. You don't love it, you don't hate it, particularly with how everyone's doing on the outside. That's my initial thought. I think that's how you get the best 11 out there at this current moment, but it's a sticky situation.
I would kind of disagree with that, but I'll save my thoughts on it for the end. So I would, but
yeah,
I'm big time. I want to commit to Hamilton in the slot. And I think
I understand it. I understand it. Yeah, I totally understand it. Yeah.
Maybe, and this would be an interesting one. Maybe you put Humphrey on the back end. Physical player, change him to safety for part of a year because everything's not right. And maybe in terms of his speed, he's got this foot problem, but maybe he can his instincts are good enough to get to a certain place at a certain time. Not sure.
It's an interesting idea. Yeah. I think all things have to be on the table because you have a lot of players that can be flexible for you and a lot of players playing well in their current positions. So I think everything's on the table right now.
Okay. All right. So Rock Yasin sat out the game. Second time is Darby, who got 26 snaps at left corner. All right. So he's out there for part of the game. And that meant, of course, that Humphrey got the other 34 snaps at left corner. Just a straight split on the thing. By the way, the 34 snaps is how I account for them in terms of he's out there. He would have a slightly higher total if you're looking at a game bulk snap count that might be 4 or 5 higher. But I actually had an over-under of 34 that I put out there on Twitter for folks to say, do you want the over or do you want the under? So feeling pretty good about myself there. It's silliness, I know. Stevens at right cornerback, and this was one of the really big surprises to me, played all 60 snaps.
Mm-hmm. Not that surprising to me, I guess. He's been playing really well there, and they seem pretty committed to having him out there. And yeah, I guess like if you want to look into a crystal ball and they say Humphrey's 100%, they want him on the outside, he's looking like his old self. Maybe then you have the Stevens rotation. Maybe Stevens goes back into the nickel, which we don't love. Maybe he goes on the back end of the safety, which is still what he's listed as a free safety. I don't think that's his best position. I do think he's best at outside corner. I want to leave him there. I think he's playing great. And that's kind of what we're getting at. Like we have two guys that are playing great at outside corner. We have a third guy in Yasin that has played well in his opportunity. And then you have your guy that's getting a huge chunk of your salary cap that you know is good, but he's coming back from injury and you don't know what to do with them. I mean, they have a real embarrassment of riches right now, which is such a turn. We were saying, offensive line looked all right on paper, and now it's been really disappointing this season. And then corners had us scared, and now it's the complete opposite.
Yep, completely agree. It's very weird, and it is really unusual for the cornerback position in particular to like heal itself during a year. Mm-hmm. The typical year for the Ravens, and there's been at least one other year where this was true. I think 2012. They kind of made a comeback from having Lardarius Webb get hurt. And they had a lot of guys step up like Kerry Williams and some others to play some good ball and get him through the Super Bowl. But it is very rare. There's much more common. You have 2005, 2007, 2015, 2021 occur where you're one or two injuries snowball into 5, and all of a sudden you barely can get enough guys off the street to play corner for you at a ridiculous cost to your salary cap as well as you're moving down the line. Anyway, back to the Ravens' current situation. So Millette had gotten a fair amount of time of playing time this last week, and he came back with 21 snaps at nickel in this game, which meant since the Ravens played 37 nickel snaps, that from 16 of them they actually had Hamilton in the slot too, which is I kind of think it's really what they wanted, but Stone's playing time, which was actually 19 snaps. That makes sense. 19 snaps because Williams missed 3 snaps, and then he had 16 where he played with Williams on the back end. That's basically how that slot and back end time is being divided. And you're seeing Millette made a lot of plays in 21 snaps. He was maybe one of the Ravens' best defenders. So it's hard to say he shouldn't be on the field. Hamilton, also one of the Ravens' best defenders in this game, no doubt about it, in terms of what he did as a tackler.
I agree.
And he played every snap, so there's not a question of that. And then Williams played 57 snaps, as we talked about, and looked like he's playing with one arm. And then you have Stone, who was reduced to 19 snaps, and he's been fantastic so far this year, which is really, it's difficult to watch that happen. And I think the Ravens are going to have to probably work through exactly how they deal with Williams the rest of the way here.
Yeah. I mean, we'll probably never get the clarification necessary to make a good guess of what his injury trajectory looks like without surgery and how he'll recover, if he needs more time to get somewhere, or if he keeps playing, it's never going to get there, et cetera. I don't know. But I guess, like, kind of going to the Hamilton thing, if we're going with the mantra of, like, how is Hamilton a superstar, I do love him at the slot just because he kind of looks like a linebacker, but he isn't a linebacker, but he has speed and ranginess and great tackling. Like, I mean, him, Queen, and Roquan in the box is just the scariest combination, I think, in the NFL. And he plays so well there. And I understand, like, why you would want to keep him there. It just makes it really tricky when you look at the rest of the roster of where we're going to put everyone else. I mean, I don't know if Darby Yasin could possibly play safety. Like, like that. You mentioned Humphrey, so maybe start thinking about those guys too. I don't know. I mean, I really have no clue. These also feel like high risk moves. I mean, the defense was playing so well. It's kind of crazy to be tinkering with it in a way, but you gotta get your stars in, right?
Aaron Rodgers' season is officially over, but yours has just begun at MyBookie. NFL, college ball, and the brand new cash out system gives you options to bet and win all season long. First 2 legs of your parlay hit? Cash out early and place another bet, or let it ride for a chance at a bigger payday. Join us at MyBookie for an entire season filled with daily odd boosts, same game parlays, and huge prize pool contests. Right now, MyBookie has a no strings attached cash bonus that lets you deposit and withdraw quick. Use the promo code RAVENS on your first deposit of $50 or more, and you can receive up to $200 in cash instantly credited to your MyBookie account. That's promo code RAVENS to claim your cash bonus now. You can bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie.
That's the question is
right.
Whether, I mean, so Williams came back from injury. There's a couple things, just maybe some other coaching dynamics going on here that I really have to kind of accept. This is the way of it. I think basically Harbaugh told everybody, we need all hands on deck for this game. Whatever you need to do to come back from your injury, however you need to rehab, whatever you need to do in terms of pain management, this is the week to get it done, because this is the Steelers week. This could be for the division. In fact, it is for the division lead right now. And the Steelers now have it because of their head-to-head lead, their head-to-head win against the Ravens. So they told everybody to come back. Now, after you do that, can you sit Williams or even play him 25 snaps or something in a game like this where he's clearly not the player Stone is? I will tell you personally, it's a pain in the ass to have safeties rotating in and out of a game that you're trying to get from the broadcast initially.
Yeah,
but that's a pure tail wagging dog situation. So if we're talking about really what makes the defense better, no doubt about it, I think it would have been Stone playing over Williams in this game.
Yeah, I agree. It's a tricky situation. I'm very curious to see how they attack it going into Tennessee. Well, I guess into London, but against Tennessee. And I was talking about it with Peter on the show. I think he mentioned it. The Lions game is where having Williams back makes a lot of sense. They have a good passing offense. We could see needing him, quote unquote, more. Hopefully he's healthier by then and this becomes a little bit clearer. But right now it's mud.
It's certainly kind of difficult. It demands a creative solution. I think that's where we are right now because of the current situation. But anyway, Stanley, it's not like there was a better player to replace Ronnie Stanley. Ronnie Stanley is the best we had, even when he played very poorly in this game. It wasn't a case of they could have replaced Lele or somebody like that who ended up, being the guy who was forced into action after McCary was hurt. No problem there. Beckham, you could play him a few less snaps, but I'm not really complaining about what he got in this game, nor even the targets he got. Other than that, I think it was probably a bad decision by Lamar and also a very bad play by Beckham not to defend that interception. Mm-hmm. And then the other player is Humphrey. And so the question with him is really about what role is he ready to take right now? And if that's not outside corner, if you can't really play outside corner at a high level, then we're stuck. Now, what I will say about Humphrey is I think his playing style actually works very well for the Ravens when they're in their very normal cover 2 defense. So I think if you have Williams and Stone on the back end, you're probably fine. If you have Hamilton and Stone on the back end, you're definitely fine in terms of having a defense that tremendously protects your corners at those front 3 positions. Because you can play. I don't want to make it sound like they're always playing quarters with those 4-2, meaning they're always dropping into a 2-by-1 where they can do that. But they can play matchup zone on each side. They can do whatever. You're showing the quarterback a cover 2 look, which dissuades him from throwing the ball deep, forces the ball basically down low, where the weaknesses of your outside corners and your slot guy are minimized. You also increase the impact of your inside linebackers on the game and in terms of pass coverage. And those guys so far have not been the two to let us down. So you look at why the Ravens were allowing 3.7 yards per pass play coming into this game. It's schematic is what did it. And then you look at what happened this game. They dominated the game the whole game until the final 41-yard play. And what did they do on the 41-yard play? They brought their free safety up to the line of scrimmage to rush the quarterback. And went with cover 0. And it's the first time they really said, hey, we want you to throw deep. Pickett did, and what do you know?
Yeah. I hear you. I've been saying it all along. Like the way that they're playing right now is just funneling targets towards these inside linebackers who are playing out of their mind. And it's dominant because this is a zig when everyone zags moment in the NFL right now for the Ravens. Because when you play cover 2, it's like, all right, well, your inside linebackers better be able to keep up. Well, ours have, and most of the league they do not. So this is a kind of a shock to the opponents that are playing us. They're like, crap, we can't do that, and it really makes it hard to play against us. So I think like this is a great thing for the Ravens that they have going, and I think we've kind of talked negatively because they have this interesting problem with the injuries and the players coming back. This group did play quite well. I mean, this was winning football for sure. And like, I can't be like lost in the conversation. They still played very dominant ball, except for basically one drive.
Yeah, honestly, if you look at this entire game, they were worked to death in that second half. That the offense only had 24 second half plays for 77 yards net of penalties. So
and I think all of that was like those 2 desperation drives. Like, like a decent amount of those plays were like those drives, which is like. The 3 and outs we're not talking about the offense. It was garbage. It was unbelievably bad.
It was really bad. The offense lost the game. The defense did everything they needed to do to win it for them. The main thing we were talking about is just the players that returned kind of losing it for them. And obviously Williams and Humphrey are part of this, and the complications they bring to refitting your secondary in a game like this made that an unfortunate thing as well that showed up in a big way on the final play, on the play that lost the game. So anyway, it was what it was. They lost the snap battle 67-65. They won the snap battle, I believe. Yeah, 67-65, despite having a 43-26 lead at the half. Pretty bad.
Very, very bad. Yeah, the offense, what they like. The amount of pressure they put on the defense, that's what we were talking about in the fourth quarter there. We're like, yeah, the defense hasn't let you down, but like you can't keep going to that well. Eventually, like an offense will prevail, even if they're not that great. Like give enough opportunities, get your defense out there too long. It's a game of explosives. Like explosive play rates higher in the NFL right now because that's like the only way people score, and we saw it here.
Okay, let's go back for a second to how you're going to set up the nickel and base defense, because those are the two that really matter in terms of how you're going to set up the secondary for that. So tell me who you want. Let's start with the base defense. Who do you want at outside corner? How do you want those snaps split, if split at all?
Like, I mean, I think right now, I guess it's dependent on Humphrey health. If Humphrey's healthy, I want him at 100%, and Steve's at 100%. I think you run him at 100 unless injury. I think that's probably your best combination right now. But I'd be convinced of Darby. I just don't know if he has a side he prefers or like a shoulder he prefers and stuff like that.
Darby's been playing left corner the whole year and playing it well, so I'm going to say he's okay with that. And he did miss a couple tackles in this game. He got hurdled once, and he missed another tackle on the sideline, which wasn't good. But generally speaking, he's been up to the task and very low yards per target. He's under 5 yards per target coming into this game, which it's outstanding for a corner. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I'm still okay with more rotation at those positions, and I'm fine with 4-for-2 rotation at those positions. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying you have to move Humphrey yet, but if you don't move Humphrey, you better be really sure about your back end of cover 2. Because right now, I think that he could be the weakness if you're not going to stick with cover 2 and stick with a good back end, which means 2 of 3 of Stone, Williams, and Hamilton need to be back there and basically playing cover 2 on any snap Humphrey's on the field. Let me almost put it that way.
Mm-hmm. And do you anticipate this is not going to get better over the course of the season? You think his speed is just going to be degraded from this?
I don't have any way to know.
Yeah,
this is a. I don't know. I don't even know the nature of the injury. I don't even know if the Ravens have announced it, other than it's a foot injury.
Haven't.
So it was some sort of surgery. So it could be a tendonitis. Effectively, what is a turf toe that he actually had to have surgery on, or it could be something else, which is a minor foot surgery. Like I don't even know what that is. But whatever the case. Yeah. I mean, any surgery on the foot is pretty major for a corner. Humphrey's physicality and downhill play could still be very valuable to this team, I think. But Humphrey, the cover corner, as far as like down the sideline, I'm worried. I'm worried after just that one play.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, I'm for splitting sides, and I don't see a reason why Stevens has to play all the snaps at this point. I'm okay with a 60-40 division on both sides, something that keeps Yasin maybe working a little bit in there. And I wouldn't even hate Humphrey in the slot, although I think it does. I don't think he gives you what Hamilton gives you in the slot. And that's why I have the, kind of the off the top of my head thought that Humphrey maybe moves to safety to take advantage of the combination of instincts, physical play, and hopefully the ability to get to a spot on the outside and have some understanding of how that's working.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be extremely interesting, to say the least. So we'll see.
All right. So anyway, maybe it's not time to give up on Humphrey after that one play. Maybe we need to see a few more, but anyway, I'm sure we will. And I hope the Ravens can't let their cover 2 get away from them. It's been too successful for the entire year. They have more opportunities to play it well. This coming game, they're playing the Titans in London. Both teams are going to be probably not feeling completely at home, despite the fact the Ravens have tried to do everything to reduce jet lag by leaving today. This is Monday they left.
Right.
And I don't know when the Titans get there, but Henry will be running the football. I would think that's something you could do a little bit easier, other than really heavy duty timing components of the passing game, when you just jump off a plane.
Yeah.
And it would probably benefit the Ravens, wouldn't you say, to have a Hamilton in the slot who's going to help against the run game some?
Yeah, no, I think against this opponent, with Henry coming up, that's a a valuable thing to do. I agree with that. I will say, according to our Titans fan Tim, he's our Titans correspondent whenever we play them. He said that they traveled early last time they went to London and lost in dramatic fashion. So they're flipping it. They're doing the opposite of the Ravens when they got beat. So they're going late. So that's their strategy.
They lost early over there, meaning they lost by a wide margin, or you say they lost in dramatic fashion, meaning they lost a close game.
I forget the context. I think they lost early. I think they lost pretty beat bad. Yeah, beat bad. So so these two teams are flipping their strategy because of their last experience. Apparently there's like no real data on what's a better option. It's just feel.
It's very limited. It would be, I would be skeptical of any conclusion on the amount of data that's out there right now.
Yeah.
All right. Now you're an IT guy. Data or data?
Either. I think it's fine.
All right. Just want to make sure.
Yep.
All right. I know we've looked it up before, and there's actually a third pronunciation that's okay as data.
I don't believe that.
No, I don't like it either.
I don't buy it.
I don't like it. All right. Let's see. What do we want to talk about a little bit? Let's talk packages for a second, because the Ravens only had these two packages, as I mentioned: 37 snaps of nickel, 23 snaps of base defense. When they're in nickel, the Ravens allowed 5.5 yards per play. That might have been their worst game of the year in nickel. They played almost 84.5% nickel for the season now. Okay. They've only played 49 snaps of base, which is about 14% and change, and 3 snaps of dime. Those are the only times they've been out of nickel the entire year. So basically they've played nickel, and they allowed 5.5 yards per play this game and 4.1 yards per play in base. One of the things about the Pittsburgh Steelers is they don't really react too much with what defensive package you send out. They don't want to really change their play. So they put in their package and their players expecting to run this play, and then they don't change the play to react to the fact that you send out a heavy package. So if they send out 21 or 22 or 12 even, and they're kind of telegraphing their run to a certain degree, they don't try and not run the ball because of that. And they're one of the non-reactive teams, we'll call them. And you could blame that on the Ravens in past years with Roman, but Roman knew that they were going to run the ball. Every other Bills knew they were running the ball, and they at least had deception that was baked into the offense to take care of that. Steelers, not really a reactive team at all in that way. They want to do what they're good at. It's kind of like playing Texas Hold'em and only playing your own cards, not trying to figure out what the other guy has.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Canada discussion doesn't need to be had here, but the fans were very upset with him very early on. The offense is pretty basic, and them not reacting to personnel packages could definitely be part of it. I do think it's interesting that the 23 snaps of base, you said, 49 total in the year. So almost half of all the base snaps were on display in this game. And I think that's right. I think that number will continue to skew towards base next week as well. So it may be more of a who you're playing.
Definitely is.
Yeah, I mean, sure. But I guess maybe we're not as committed of a nickel team. I mean, we're committed nickel, but we're not maybe using as nickel as much as the season progresses. Maybe that was just an anomaly the first 4 weeks based on who you're playing.
So there's two things that force you into the base defense that make you want to play more base defense. One is game situation sometimes dictates it. Even when the other team wants to put, say, 11 personnel on the field, or more often 12 personnel on the field, you lean on your base defense because you know they're going to run the ball to maintain a lead. And so you do it in that situation. Possibility number two is the team plays a lot of 12, and your reaction to it is base. And here's the great thing about the Ravens is when they have Hamilton at nickel, he's the ultimate versatile nickel because he's big enough to play right opposite that tight end in 12 personnel and still make a contribution to the run game. Whereas, if you put out Pepe Williams or somebody like that, you're severely handicapping your run defense by doing so. Mm-hmm. So in the case of the Titans, I think they could still play a fair amount of nickel versus 12 against them and do reasonably well. I mean, it's obviously you got to play a fair amount of base versus the Titans, but It's yeah.
They don't have very scary wide receivers, and Chig has kind of had a lower than expected year as well. So we'll definitely see what they tend towards, but it wouldn't surprise me if we are in Baltimore.
All right, I want to make sure I have the sheet out for me here in terms of what the Ravens did in terms of ATS, BOQ, and pressure. So this is one of the things here was that the Ravens again had. Why don't we start with numbers first because that's the easiest thing to do. And the Ravens had a game where they still tried to stay with their 4-man rush, but it didn't really work. So they had 35 total results that resulted in a pass or sack plays and a couple of scrambles in addition, but they're not included in this. So the rushed 4 on 29 of those 35. So that's all but 6. So it's over 80%, obviously over 83% probably, and gave up 6.0 yards per play. Didn't have a sack. Didn't have a turnover. They did get some pressure, but 6.0 yards per play is certainly not terrible by NFL standards that you wouldn't want your quarterback to throw for 6 yards per play. But it also is not as good as what the Ravens have done for the year so far. And I don't think the Ravens would have been delighted about a number like that with Kenny Pickett in there. So they're probably thinking, we really want to get some 4-man pressure. We want to have a couple sacks in that. And we're going to give them some exotic 4-man pressures that are going to create sack opportunities by dropping outside linebackers for the line of scrimmage. Anyway, no sacks, no turnovers in that situation. And obviously, the defense not getting a turnover in this game, pretty significant in terms of the loss as well.
Yeah, we had the special teams turnover that we did absolutely nothing with, but you're right. It was surprising too. I felt like there was a couple of good plays on the ball where interceptions could have happened. I think fumbles are hard to predict. But yeah, that was definitely challenging. Something that they didn't get to capitalize on with Pickett just not being that great of a quarterback.
Right. All right. 5-man pass rush, 4 plays for -4 yards, 2 sacks included in that group. So this is where I'm getting into is they really did have to rush 5 or 6 to get pressure generated. With 2 plays, they went for a total of 33 yards. One of them was the 41-yard play to Pickett, which they picked up to pick ends, which the Steelers picked up and was an ample time and space throw. It's really bad, by the way, when you give up an ample time and space throw, give up what would have been a 3-second pocket, despite the fact that the opponent, despite the fact you rushed 6. And then the other play was a sack. So a sack for -8. So they had 2 plays for 33 in total. I always like to say defense loves variation, but that's not the right kind of variation.
No. And that sack when they rushed 6, that was when they rushed PQ and Roquan, right? And then PQ and Matabike split.
I believe so. Let me get to it right on this. Yep, it's S6/92 with a pressure initially by Clowney on that play. So they had this nice multiple contribution sacks like the Ravens all seem to be now.
Yeah, and then you had them all that clean.
That was clean.
The clean one, and then the urban hustle play. So yeah, that was that is definitely a disappointing thing. I think one thing we'll talk about it in the next episode with the positional players, but the outside linebackers were pretty quiet in this game. Just not that many plays were funneled towards them, it felt like.
Yeah, I think you're right. I had Clowney for 3 pressures in this game, one of which ended up in the S-8, 1 incomplete and 1 pass for 4. So it's not like he had no impact on the game, but it certainly wasn't what we'd hoped for from his past outings. And it's a little bit disappointing. What I like to see in that column of 4-man rushes on my spreadsheet here is a fair number of. I want to see some sacks, I want to see some turnovers, and I want to see some pressures. And that's between the 3 of those, they did not really do enough in terms of getting Kenny Pickett on the ground, in particular, with a 4-man pass rush.
Yeah.
All right. I did want to see, was there any play in this game? I don't believe they had a single quarterback hit that was not a sack. But I'm going to confirm that for a second.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
They had 4 quarterback hits, but there were 2 on the same play with Matabike and Queen picking it up and each getting a half sack. So they did not otherwise get him on the ground. And meanwhile, Lamar took a pounding in this game in terms of being put on the ground. So anyway, not what we'd hope for. Okay, so we talked through the numbers. Now, the next thing in terms of the sacks is to look at how did they do with ample time and space, ball out quick, and pressure. So he had ample time and space on 11 plays. Those went for 126 yards. They included 3 of their longest plays for the day, a 41, a 23, and a 21. They also had another 23 and a 21, which were on ball out quick. But 11 and a half yards per play with ample time and space. That's really good. So it's meaning really good for them, not really good for the Ravens defense.
Yeah, I was to say, okay.
So they completed 8 of 11 passes there. Then a ball out quick it seemed like a lot more than this as I'm watching the game. It seemed like there were more ball out quick situations where Pickett got rid of it. But honestly, there's only 8 in the end of the 35. And those went for 6.6 yards per play. 4 of them were incomplete. So I don't have a particular feeling one way or the other about that being particularly high or low, but it's not low. It's pretty good, I would say. It definitely truncates the opportunity set to being shorter passes. And then they got 16 pressures. Okay, now 16 pressures out of 35. For starters, I should have this number already presented here, but I don't for some reason. So 46% pressure. Nothing wrong with that pressure rate, particularly if we're rushing 4 most of the time. So that part was fine. And Pickett threw for only 1.4 yards per play on those. So 23 yards net on 16 plays. They didn't have any real long plays in that group, 1 for 13 yards, 1 for 10. And then all 3 sacks were in that group as well. So I don't think the problem was when the Ravens got pressure. I think it's that they didn't get quite enough 4-man pressure and allowed a few too many ample time and space opportunities in among those.
I agree with that. I think one thing that is worth noting about Pickett is that even if I don't think he's a great quarterback, I don't necessarily think he's going to be a franchise quarterback per se, a great player. He has been able to rise to the occasion in the few times that the Ravens have played him so far when it's a clutch drive is needed or big plays are needed in big situations. So it's been an Achilles heel, something I've noticed. And I think even in other games too, against other opponents, Pickett has had an ability to step up when it's really needed and called upon. So as much as I don't think he's a threatening quarterback down to down, he does seem to have a little bit of that trait.
We definitely were thinking that the Ravens probably did well to get Pickett instead of Trubisky. Of course, if Pickett was sitting and not on the sidelines, then Trubisky would not have had a reasonable backup, which was something to maybe look at. But how do you feel about it now? Do you think we got the better of the two, or do you think we drew the short straw by getting Pickett?
I mean, I think Pickett's a better player. I'm not a big Trubisky guy. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, the other thing we look at is in terms of scheme, there were 4 blitzes. And that's very small for 35 opportunities, actually 11%. They got a pressure on 3 of them. And then the 4th was, guess what, a 41-yard touchdown to Pickens. So that didn't work out so great, even though one of those was a sack. The 2 blitzes by Hamilton, 2 blitzes by Queen were the off-ball blitzes in this game. They stunted 8 times. And that included 4 pressure events, but they also had a stunt on the 41-yard touchdown to Pickens. So that's one I have a little bit of a problem with. I think if you're going to rush the quarterback with 8, go ahead and rush the quarterback with 8. Don't stunt. You got somebody coming off an edge. Your main goal on the play should be to occupy the man opposite you so that everybody has their chance to further to the outside of you. But whatever, it obviously didn't work, didn't get home, and they gave up the big play. So anyway, for the pass rush, that's what I got for today. They did run a handful of simulated pressures. They had 0 of those last week. I think it was 5 this week. And did they get a sack on a simulated pressure here? Got to be real quick. They did get a Millette sack was on a simulated pressure where they dropped Matabike and Pierce into coverage. Kind of like that about McDonald. He's fearless in letting his interior defenders drop into coverage.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm surprised by that. I know he's done it. I guess I didn't realize that it was on that play that he had done it there. So,
well, the other time it kind of backfired. Clowney got dropped into coverage on a 10-yard pass, and then Clowney ended up with a coverage responsibility on the play. So, if the quarterback reads hot effectively, he's going to beat your guy, and he may create a problem for yourself. But I keep coming back to that one game a couple of years ago where they lost with all the cover zero blitzes at Miami, and Adam Butler dropped to cover 18 times, nose tackle, dropped to cover 18 times in that game. So,
Yep.
All right. We're going to be back for the second half of this show and talk a little bit about the individual players. But Alec, why don't you tell people where they can talk football with you online?
Sure. You can find us at One Winning Pod on Twitter and onewinningpod.com. And we do a weekly recap and preview show for each game. And then, in the off season, of course, we do coverage of whatever's going on, be it free agency or the draft. So definitely make sure to give us a listen.
All right. Great thoughts here. And Alec, I always really appreciate you coming on, being prepared like this. And, obviously ideal situation where you've just done your show here and are ready to go. And it's great stuff. And I also appreciate right now having a Baltimore sports fan on the other side of the microphone here, because I really wouldn't want to be doing this for someone who's a Ravens fan and say a Yankees fan. And it's, that's a shame. Oh, that's a shame. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
I really would not want that right now. But anyway, appreciate you, buddy. Other folks out there, if you'd like to do a film study short, hit me up. I had someone just check in today, see if they could do a different type of podcast on whether or not there's something to talk about with McDonald's defense and how he runs it and some things he has in mind. So we'll get to that hopefully very soon. And I'll get back to you very quickly. DMs are always open on Twitter. Alec, thanks again for joining me.
Of course, Ken.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.